to raise your hand instead of using the Q&A function. So you just raise your hand, and then I will unmute you in the order that people raise their hand, and invite you to join us at the floor and ask your question. Now, if you have a question and you don't have the option to speak to us because your mic is not working or any other technical difficulties, you can use the Q&A, and we will take time to review the questions there. But know that the easiest and most direct format is you raising your hand and asking a question. After the webinar, we will make a summary of some of the questions asked in the Q&A format and make that available via our communication channels. And this webinar is also being live streamed on YouTube, so the recording will also be available on the ESCI YouTube channel. Yeah, some other rules. I think it speaks for itself that we're all professional people here, and we have sometimes certain frustrations or ideas, but we try to maintain our composure and use our nice words, as they say sometimes to children. So we expect everyone to do that as well today. So if there are no other questions, I invite everyone to raise their hands so that we begin, because otherwise we'll be staring at my slightly tired face for the next 90 minutes, which can become a little bit awkward. So I see maybe that Jan-Mal, they have raised their hand as well. Maybe you would like to say something as well from the beginning. I think you can unmute yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, David. Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me yet. So I'm Jan-Mal Bidot. I'm responsible for the European Student Card Initiative at the European Commission in DG EAC. And I wanted to introduce to you also the colleagues, my team leader, Vito Borelli, who may want to say a few words to you as well.
Thank you, Jan-Mal. Just a few words to introduce myself. As Jan-Mal said, I've just joined the unit in the GEAC, so I'm relatively new in this specific dossier, but I wanted to take advantage of this meeting to familiarize myself with the main issues of the ESCI, which I know is a rather complex mechanism. So I'm here mainly to listen, but if I may be of any help, I'm here also to intervene. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jan-Mal.
Thank you, Vito. And indeed, we are here to listen to you today. And we have been recently joined by someone who may be a familiar face for some of you, Harpa, who will be a relationship manager. I would say she would also be a relationship manager between DG EAC and the consortium managing the Student Card Initiative. And maybe she also wants to say a few words to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jan-Mal. Indeed, I've recently rejoined the unit here in EAC, but unlike Vito, not new to the file, but joining now in a bit of a different position than I was before. Just really thrilled to be with all of you here today and to really listen to your input and your questions and see how I, in my new role, can really help facilitate things and take things forward. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. And that's it from us, and I don't want to take more time from you.
No, thank you for that introduction. I think that helps. There's a lot of helpful information to some of the people here. So I hope everyone can hear me well, because I saw some question in the Q&A. If my sound is bad, I can switch off my headset. But for now, I see that we have a few questions. So the first person that raised his hand is Thomas Breur, I think. I'm going to do my best to pronounce everyone's names perfectly today. But please forgive me any discrepancies. So Thomas, I'm going to allow you to talk, and the floor is yours. You're still muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you perfectly.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Pronunciation of my name was quite fine, so it's okay. Thank you for this. First of all, I want to say that I really like this European Student Card Initiative. I think this is a good tool, but we face several problems. Let's say like this. We are a very small school with 400 students and with a paper student card, so a physical student card. and I already wanted to switch this to European version some years, 2 years ago, but I couldn't find any information about what we have to put on this paper document to identify it as a European student card. First thing, we had discussions about buying this hologram, but a roll of 8,000 pieces lasts 70 years for us, so it's not really ecological. Second point, and the third point is we don't have a professional student management system. So how can I bring our student data with the correct information into this European student card database somehow, so that these cards become eligible for services abroad? So 3 questions somehow. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Thomas, for your question. Who from the panel would like to take the question?
Sorry, I can try to answer some of your questions. If I understand well, your questions relate more to the European Student Card project and the fact that we have this project to add a QR code and a hologram to the existing cards, to make them more European. This is correct, Thomas?
This was at least my first yes. Initiative 2 years ago. Yes.
Yes. So I could answer to your questions here. I think here but maybe David will correct me. I think here we're covering more the Erasmus without paper part of the European Student Card initiative.
That's true, but I don't think there's any risk or anything negative about answering this question here as well.
Okay.
And somehow, for me, both are going together, because if I send a student abroad, and this year we have about 25 out of our 400, then I need to create a European student identifier, so to enable them to do their online learning agreements. And today I don't know how to do this.
Okay, yeah, about the European Student Identifier, I'm pretty sure that the team here of the consortium can answer all your questions about how to do it exactly. I know we have some documents that can support you for that. Mm-hmm. Now it's important to understand that within the European Student Card Initiative, you have sort of two different projects that indeed are interlinked. And in the future, obviously, aim to be more and more interlinked, but at the moment are quite distinct one from the other. Mm-hmm. One is the Erasmus without paper to manage mobility, Erasmus plus mobilities without paper, as the title implies. And the other one is about the European Student Card project to add some kind of European element to existing student cards. Mm-hmm. But you can very well work on one without the other. Okay. They are not preconditioned. Now, if you want to get involved on the European Student Card project and start making your student cards Europeans, I can direct you to documentation that we have on how to join or consortium who's working on that, and how to issue this famous QR code and hologram. You may not have been able to find the right information, maybe because the European Student Card Initiative is so, as Vito said, complex, and there is a lot of information out there that is not necessarily easy to reach. But this is also why we have recently launched an information portal that covers both initiatives, and on which hopefully you will be able to find all the information you need, both for the student card and for Erasmus without paper.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm interested in all kind of information I can get on both. Well, as said, to our students that will apply at the beginning of next year for September, they need to do their learning agreement online. So I need to be able to create these European student identifiers. We have been refused by our French another network because we're too small and it's much too expensive. It's okay when you have 4,000 students, but not if you have 400. So, and we don't have an IT service and so on. And so it's a lot of things that they say, okay, they cannot accept us as a partner in this network. So I need some kind of other tool, whether it's an online platform or a website or whatever, to create these student identifiers, at least for these 25 students that will go and study abroad. For the rest, it's not yet necessary.
I think members of the consortium and Joao can answer your specific question about this European student identifier.
I can try to, even if my voice is a bit shaky. So hello, Thomas, and thank you for your question. So specifically what you were mentioning about the students that need an ESI in order to do a learning agreement. You mentioned Renater, so I'm guessing that you come from France.
Yes.
Now, my understanding is that Renater and the French authorities run something that we call an IDP of last resort, which is basically a web tool where you can go and essentially put students through the system and generate their ESIs. I'll share a link on the chat about what is done at the European level, which follows the same logic. But I would encourage you to check with the colleagues from the NA in particular, whether you should go to this IDP of last resort or whether at a national level you have a backup solution to do what you need to do. In principle, to be quite frank, you shouldn't have a big problem. There was already a mapping done going back more than 1 year about which AGIs are part of the federation, as you mentioned, which ones are not. And I can't really comment on the specifics because France is a little bit complicated in the sense that you have different ministries involved, et cetera, et cetera. So I cannot pretend, it wouldn't be honest to pretend that I know what are the eligibility criteria to join the French IDP of last resort. But I think your NA should be able to help you with that. And they would also be the contact so that if for some reason you cannot issue ESIs to your students through the French infrastructure, that we would try to do it through the European infrastructure. This is literally what the name says, which is basically a way to make sure that even smaller institutions are not excluded from the process and that you basically have the tools to do what you need to do. And then with a group of 20 or 25 students, this becomes relatively straightforward. So that would be my practical advice. If you can ping the colleagues from your NA just to understand what the first step ought to be, but something should happen in terms of you accessing an infrastructure of the kinds that I've put in the link. I hope this helps a little bit. I'm sorry that I cannot go into the specifics of how your institution exactly can do it, but I'd be quite confident that we're not gonna leave you behind in terms of making sure that your students can participate in the online learning agreements and all of the subsequent processes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I would also like to say, so after the webinar, we will make available a document where we answer some of the questions, and we will also provide links to all the documentations that we have, mainly where you can find the specific documentation, how you can contact the European Student Card Help Desk for some questions, etc. So that will also be in a follow-up documentation that we will make available again on those portals, but we'll also share the document, the Q&A with the digital officers, so you will also get it through that way. The next person that raised her hand is Carina Jensen. So Carina, if you're still with us, I'm going to allow you to talk and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly fine. Welcome.
Great, thank you. So I'm thinking that it's you guys that also have developed the Erasmus Plus dashboard, correct? Yeah. Are you still working on it? Especially the part about or the IIA manager, as it's called.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because we have a very
if you are indeed, I'm sorry, I'm going to brief. If you mean working out, on the one hand, we are maintaining it, and that's also why I mentioned the service desk. We have a service desk where you can go for specific questions in relation to the dashboard and things that are not working. And we're also working on improving the dashboard by working on a newer updated version that will become available towards the end of this year, early next year.
Okay, super,
so,
because it
yes.
is about the development and wishes for the functionalities.
All right. In this, so you can also ask your question, but I can quickly answer already that in the service desk, there is an option to also submit ideas and suggestions about improvements and new functionalities. So that is definitely the place to go if you have those.
Okay, I actually thought that was more for questions and not for wishes. Okay, I'll just go there.
All right. Yeah, I don't want to take away the space or your question, but I think that's if you ask your question here, I think one of the answers will be like, that's a good idea. If you can help us by submitting it to the service desk, because that's also how we collect suggestions and look at how we can improve things.
Yeah, good.
All right, thank you. So the next person that we'll invite to unmute yourself is Mira de Moor. If you're still here, Mira, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay, hello. I have a short question, actually. I'm glad to be here, first of all. There are, of course, many pending issues for the moment, but one that is connected for me clearly to interoperability is something regarding the signing process of an IIA. Very short, my signature was not visible for the partner and the other way around. So one provider only has the function where you can approve. Another one has a function where you can both approve and sign. So upon asking my question to the third-party provider, I received a message and an answer that there seems to be a lack of a well-defined signing concept. And I will give you a short quote because then it will become more clear to you if I use the correct jargon. So the answer was, well, a part of the answer, the IIA interface as defined by the EWP group does not contain a well-rounded signing concept. All IIAs need to be approved by both parties, and there is a separate service for the approval of IIAs, but it is not defined anywhere when an IIA should be considered as signed, and there is no separate signing service available. So in Mobility Online, we show an IIA as being signed by the partner institution if a signing date has been approved, if a signing date has been provided, but not all providers send a signing date as this field is optional in the official interface. So I'm just wondering, how could it be that such an important and even crucial step in this process is not properly defined, because it's been giving me a lot of problems. And that's a mildly way of saying it.
All right, thank you, Mira, for your question. I think that Kostas, who is lead for the team that's working on the dashboards, is the best placed person to address your question. Kostas? Hello, Mira.
First of all, there isn't a misunderstanding about the notions of signing and approving in the specification of the EWP network itself. I mean, signing and approval are two different notions. And in order for an IIA to be finalized, you actually need both approvals. Now, what we are seeing in other partners' implementations, that there is a misunderstanding of what signing and what approving is, but this is well under our radar. And it was a major point of discussion in the Warsaw workshops for developers. What is signing and what is approval according to the EWP network, and how all the different implementers should adhere to that? I'm guessing that you are asking about the application that you use in your institution, right? This is
well, that's a part of it, but the biggest problem is if it is not clearly defined what a signature is and what it means, well, then it's hard to, at the end of the line, have a lot of signed agreements, no?
I'm afraid that it's very clear what signing and what approving in the EWP network is. There are misunderstandings in the way partners are implementing it, but we are trying to clarify it and move forward with this issue. It is one of the issues that have been really over discussed in the past couple of months, but the specification is clear about this. That's
so I should wait.
This is what I can share.
I
Right
think,
now.
Mira, sorry, I think I can, thank you, Kostas. I think, Mira, we can add two things. One, there is a governance body within the EWP structure, which is the infrastructure forum, where our technical people sit together with the different providers to discuss specifically these issues. And I think also that Paul from the University of Ghent would like to say something about the mandatory business requirements, which is an action, which is part of the action plan to harmonize the requirements for the implementation. Paul?
Yes, thank you, David. And it's indeed the case that we are working on mandatory business requirements that will become part of the whole specification of each of the processes, where we will look at the business processes from an IRO perspective, from an end user perspective, and there once again what Kostas was trying to explain will be made more explicit as well. That from an EWP perspective, the agreements need to be approved by both sides, and then the agreement can be considered established. And signing of agreements is up to the local implementation. And I hope that also those teams that implement functionality, they will need to take the mandatory business requirements into account. And this will indeed lead to possibly some changes in local implementations. But from the EWP perspective, it's all about approving the interinstitutional agreements.
This is exactly what I wanted to say. Thank you, Paul. And if this is not clear, maybe another article in the knowledge base would clear the meaning for those who are not sure how to read the specification. But definitely, we approve interinstitutional agreements in the network, and after it is approved, it can be used for mobilities, meaning it can be consumed by sending students to your partners.
So maybe as just a little add-on, Mira, what our colleagues were saying is that you have, on the one hand, you have EWP implementation, so that is the thing that we can control at our level, where we can make changes, and the local implementation means what needs to be implemented by the end system. So when it's a dashboard, that is something that we manage, but it also means that all the different universities who use their own system or the providers need to make some implementations in their systems. And if something goes wrong there, that is what we try to fix through the infrastructure forum. Or something that we can also mention that one part of the action plan is that the service desk is also open now for tickets regarding issues with third-party providers. So that if you have an issue that is between you as a dashboard user and a third-party system, or as a third-party system user, you can also submit a support ticket now to the service desk, so that we become aware of these issues and can fix them, because it has to do with the local implementation. So I hope that answers your question in a way. It doesn't solve your problem right now, I think, but it does mean that it is something that is one of the main issues that we are experiencing, but also that we are aware of and trying to fix.
Okay, thank you. In a way, as you described, but thank you, David.
Yes, no problem. Thank you. So the next person that I will invite to join us at 4 is Nadine Bentolila. Nadine, I'm going to unmute you and welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your answers. I'm calling from France, and just like the previous speakers, we're also a small school of 400 students, and I've come across similar problems as the ones identified by the previous speakers. So I'm just going to focus on the most important one is enabling the dashboard, which is a priority for us because I haven't been able to do that. I've connected to the service desk. I've even taken a number. I've taken my ticket, just like at the supermarket, but I haven't received any answers as of yet. So I've done this several times. So I haven't been able to enable the OLA 3.0 for incoming mobilities. All the drop-down menus of the category directly attached to the OLA are grayed out or disabled. So I can't find university partners. I can't find students who are incoming to my institution. So I basically can't move ahead from then on, and I can't download any lists. I'm connected to the dashboard, but I can't do anything with it. So that's my problem. I don't know if you can suggest a solution for me today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nadine. While our colleagues trying to see who can answer your question, I can say that for the service desk, there is a certain time that it takes to follow up with tickets, because we do have a lot of tickets. But you mentioned that you've sent a ticket already a few times. So that's maybe something that we should check out. There is also some documentation about specific issues on the competence center, which will be linked in the document that we make available. But I think if there's anything specific that we can say regarding your issue, I think it also Kostas, maybe you as well, that I need to call upon.
Nadine, hello, Nadine.
Hi, Kostas.
To be honest, from the description, I didn't understand what the problem is.
So I've been in contact with someone called Michalis or Mishalis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name properly.
This is probably one of the service desk agents.
Yes, and since our last conversation, I haven't received anything. He asked me to send him the email addresses of the students concerned, which I did, and that was 2 weeks ago. So I reconnected with the help desk this week to just get an update on the situation, because I can't move forward.
Nadine, what is your problem? What is the problem you're experiencing?
My problem is that I cannot use the OLA for incoming mobilities because all the drop-down menus are grayed out. So it's like it's disabled on the dashboard. I can't use them, so I can't approve LAs. I can't sign them to say that the student is in our establishment and is following courses at our establishment with our partner establishment in Spain. So that is essentially my problem, is not being able to use it.
Do my colleagues mind if I take a wild guess? So Alona, Nadina, thank you for your question.
I can't, to be honest, I can't take a wild guess. Would you like to share in private the issue number, and I'll follow up personally on this issue?
Whatever, I mean, of course, I'll, if you can help, yes, in private or in public.
To be honest, I have to understand what the problem actually is. So if you have the ticket number and you can send it to me in private, of course, right?
Kostas, I think it might be about, so what is grayed out are the institutions that are not connected to EWP. That's why you are not able to make an OLA with them.
This is probably the reason. Are you using the EWP connection of the dashboard? Have you declared that you are using the EWP dashboard for exchanging learning agreements in the EWP settings?
Yes, I've ticked. That was part of the process that was identified at the beginning, and your service desk technician asked me to declare it. So that was the stage that was actually ticked off. Yes. So I'm now in the second phase, which is non-operational, so to speak.
All right, but even I think it, like Kostas is suggesting, it would be good if you could share in a private message, which you can do in the chat function. You can go to Kostas and you can, or you can share it with all the panelists as well. your ticket number, and then we can try to follow up from our side. Because without being able to see your system or anything else, it's very hard for a live help desk session, I think.
Thank you.
And I think, Joao, if you want to add something.
Hello, Nadine. Thank you for your question. And, colleagues were saying it's kind of difficult. We need to look into the specifics. But for the benefit of the other colleagues attending, because maybe someone has encountered a similar issue, just judging by your description, and please, I'm not saying that this is the root cause of the problem. This is what I meant by a wild guess. It could also be that the issue that you're encountering has to do with the settings of your representation in the dashboard. Now, what I understood is that the colleagues from the service desk already guided you through this process. I'm going to drop a link on the chat from the wiki, where there is basically a tutorial, maybe not for you because I guess you've been through this, but really in the spirit that we have a few more colleagues in attendance and maybe this is relevant for them. There is a rule of thumb, which is you cannot be represented, for example, for the learning agreement in two separate systems. And if you hadn't been in touch with the service desk already, I would say this is quite likely to be something that is causing this kind of grayed out that you're seeing. But let's follow up on that directly as cost is offered, because it could indeed be something else that we're not privy to. And let's get you on the learning agreement as quickly as possible then.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Nadine, for your question, and we will be following up on it. The next person that I'm inviting to unmute is Stephen Gargam. If you are still here and you still have a question, the floor is yours. Welcome. I see that you're still muted, so I can ask you to unmute, but I don't know if you can hear me. If not, we can go to the next person. And the next person is Anja Stichhardt-Leitner. Anja, if you're here, I'm going to allow you to talk. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Hello, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard you perfectly fine. Welcome.
Thank you, and sorry for having such a difficult last name to pronounce.
No, it's fine. It's a challenge. It's a learning process.
So I'm calling from Austria, and I would like to add to the question of Mira earlier. It's about signing interinstitutional agreements that I mostly work on at the moment. And for me, our provider gives us the opportunity. We have two separate buttons for sign and for approve of an agreement. And I don't really know what's the difference, what the different meaning, like Mira said before, but also I don't know, or it's unclear to me how this should work in the light of a timeline. What is first, what is second? Because our provider told us that if we sign an agreement, it's automatically also approved. So from my point of view, that would mean the approval should come before the signing, but as you said before, signing is only local and approving is sent through EWP to the partner. That would be the wrong way around. So I'm not sure if our provider interprets that specification, and if I need to talk to the provider again. And also for me, it's unclear how it happens when we have changes to interinstitutional agreements. What does this with the signature? So I send an agreement that is approved or signed, and they change something, and we try to approve it, but it doesn't come through, because I often have the problem that with different providers, the signatures don't show up correctly in the system. So I think there is, you said it's already over discussed, this topic, but it's not working smoothly on the user side. So how should we communicate with our providers and partners regarding this?
Thank you, Anya. I think without looking at the specific part, I think also the last thing that you say is an important one that we will try to answer, but I think Paul can take the first part of the question. Thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank you, David. And here again, it's indeed what we do not have under control from the EWP perspective is how implementation is done in the local nodes. So therefore, I think indeed we need to refer you to your own third-party provider or in-house provider. I'm not sure what system you are using. But I hope the business requirements that will be published soon can also help and guide your provider on how to offer this functionality. But basically, it should be you who decides whether signing should come first or after approval, because that's your process that needs to be supported. From the EWP perspective, we only look into the need of having the approval from both sides in order to establish the agreement. So that's hopefully part of an answer to the first question. And then when indeed, I think it was also in the chat, questions about deletion of agreements, question about modifications of approved agreements. We are very well aware that this is common practice, that even if we approve an agreement, those agreements need to be modified, and it's even part of the official template from the European Commission. However, from the technical perspective, the consortium wanted to have stable APIs in order to try to first approve the agreement before going to the next step, and also offering functionalities at the EWP level to also delete or revise or modify existing agreements. So it's something that will come. We will work on it the coming months from the technical perspective, and then hopefully throughout 2023, when the new specifications will become available, providers will also offer the functionality. And I do know that some providers already often offer such functionality to their clients. But of course, if it's not specified at the EWP level what should happen, this is kind of breaking interoperability as well. So it's definitely something that from the consortium we will work on, and that will become available throughout the next year.
If I may add, if I may add to this, in fact, we already started addressing the issue. There were two technical meetings, two technical workshops in September, where we met with providers, and those issues were discussed. Also, tomorrow, we have a next infrastructure forum meeting with providers, when I want to, this changes in interinstitutional agreement will be a very important point in the agenda. And I do hope that we will come to some conclusions so fast that till the end of 2022, we will be able to have specifications ready with description of the scenarios. And that should allow providers, give them enough time to implement them, let's say in the first quarter of 2023. But this is not an easy task. We will address termination of interinstitutional agreement, deletion of interinstitutional agreements, and also changes in interinstitutional agreements. But also we have in agenda discussion about various possible improvements in typical scenarios of exchange of interinstitutional agreements. All this will be discussed tomorrow with the provider. So if you have a provider, and if you are not sure whether the provider is part of infrastructure forum, please ask them to come, because I still hear from here and there that well, we don't know that such meeting take place.
Right. I don't know if you are finished or
everyone's opinion will be taken into account.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Paul. Yeah, I think Anya and to everyone here, what we're trying to say, or what you hear from my colleagues, is that we do not have control over the full process, which means that we also have to work together with the providers, and that we are aware that there are some issues, and that's also specifically why we have brought Hafpa along as relationship manager, because she will do bilateral meetings with third-party providers and look into these specific issues on behalf of the consortium and of higher education institutions. So that is specifically what we're trying to solve here. So yeah, like you hear. So thank you for your question. I think that's also why I think it's important that these issues are brought to our attention by asking them or mentioning it during the town hall, but also, as we mentioned before, by submitting a ticket in the service desk so that we can be aware with any issues regarding third-party providers or exchanging data. That we can track those issues and ask these questions during the infrastructure forum that Janina mentioned, because these are regular meetings.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. I have been submitting regular tickets to Mobility Online, but not to the help desk of the EWF before, so I will consider doing that too then in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and I hope we were able to help in any way or clarify things. I see that the next person that I will be unmuting is Trine Eriksen. Trine, the floor is yours, and welcome again.
Thank you. I think my question is more overall question and maybe more like a concern I have for the EW project in total. When it has been a very long time since I have seen a timeline for the EWP project. Previous timelines have shown that we are now working on the interinstitutional agreements, we're working on the learning agreements, and then it has already been planned that we will also have nominations and transcripts as a part of EWP. And at this stage, we have already worked quite a lot with interinstitutional agreements and learning agreements, and both we and our partners are experiencing a lot of challenges, a lot of problems. And on top of that, we also have, I know they're not directly related to EWP, but we have two new IT tools within Erasmus that we are using, the EU Academy and the beneficiary module. And with both systems, we are also experiencing a lot of difficulties. So at the moment, we are having difficulties with whatever tool we are using for Erasmus program. And it's a bit concerning that we don't know, like in the future, your plans. Like my concern is that new initiatives and new activities will be started before we have like the initiatives we have already started before they are well functioning and working, that we already have to think of the next step, even though still we are having so many issues with the activities that we have already started. So I think I'm looking for a new timeline where I can be reassured that we will not start any new initiatives until those that we have already started will be working. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you for your question, Trine. I think Jan, now that you would like to respond.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Trine, for this feedback. It's very important, of course, for us to take into account what's happening, what the expectations are on both sides, and what difficulties you're facing on the ground. Indeed, you mentioned difficulties with the beneficiary module, which is something I saw in the Q&A section as well. It's a bit out of the scope of this discussion, but we are very much aware in DGAC that the beneficiary module is not working perfectly fine, and that we are putting a lot of work in there to make sure that we can solve the issues. You mentioned the difficulties you are having now with the current system and the current functionalities, and about the timeline, and you might wish to have more clarity on. At the beginning of the project, we had the ambition to start with interinstitutional agreements, learning agreements this year, to have them fully functional, and then to move next year to nomination acceptance and transcript of records documents. Obviously, the approach that was chosen also needs to take into account the reality on the ground and the difficulties you're facing. And this is why we have asked the consortium, and they have put in place a new governance structure where the voice of the users that you are will be more heard when it comes to defining future timelines and digitalization of other processes, because we don't want to impose on you new requirements that would not be ready to be used without any hurdle. We acknowledge all the work you're doing on your side and how much work you're doing to make this work, and we are very grateful. So it is clear that if we go to digitalize new documents, new steps, you will be consulted first, and you will have your say on when these documents will be digitalized and under what conditions. One condition being clear is that it should work from the start for the vast majority of the users.
Thank you, Jan-Mal. Trina, I hope that answers your questions in a way.
Well, yes, thank you. It does in a way. Like I think it could be good for us if a new timeline would be published soon, just to reassure us that like time is running and that a new timeline is being considered.
Timeline for what documents? Are you talking about the international agreements and the learning agreements, or about further documents to be digitalized?
I don't remember when we got it, but there was published a timeline with like all the aspects of the EWP project, like also with nominations and transcripts that were already mentioned, like when academic year 23, 24, I cannot remember, but they were also published that we expected nominations and transcripts to be a part of EWP. And for that, it would be nice to have a new timeline published where we can see you acknowledge that we have a lot of difficulties with the initiatives we have already started. So the others have been perhaps postponed, that we will not start any new initiatives until the ones we have already started is working. So there has been a timeline showing also nominations and transcripts, etc. And it has been a very long time since we sort of got a new timeline for the whole EWP project.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There was a timeline at the very first start of the project. The reason you haven't seen an updated timeline is not because we want to stick to this original timeline at all costs, but because we first want to consult you on a new timeline to define, so you can be part of the decision.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your question and for your response as well, Jan-Mal. The next person that I will invite to the floor is Valerio Greco. Valerio, if you can hear me and you still have your question, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm talking from an international office of a private university in Italy. And let's say that now we are like moving from the Erasmus dashboard to our local, let's say, platform to do everything in the digital way. Anyway, as far as you can see also from the previous speech, I see that we are like going at different speed to this digitalization of processes. And somehow I would love to make students feel safe, let's say, in the way that, for example, the destinations will be confirmed for the next years. So why I'm telling you this, because we are signing all the agreements digitally with most of the partners, but some of them aren't doing this way, and we are receiving some proposal to proceed by email, some proposing to proceed by the paper one, but signed digitally, and so on. Now, as far as I know, the guidelines say that we can't proceed to extend our agreements for the next academic year, if not on the dashboard or let's say in any digital way. But can we just in these cases accept these agreements just in order to continue the mobilities of students and teachers also for the next academic year, or we should be more say straight with them and saying that it is the only way? And I don't know, so that's the main point, because with most of the partners we are fine, but there are some that are finding many difficulties, and we don't know if we can insert them in our list of partners or not for the next academic year. And so that is the point. I would love to ask you some suggestion about that.
All right, Valeria, thank you for your yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry, just to finish, just because of course I feel that I want, of course, to support them and not to be one more, let's say, problem now for them. And so I'm just sharing some good practice, of course, with them. But of course, I'm not working there, so I don't know exactly all their procedures and so on. On the other way, I would love to them to not like feeling alone and out of the project now in this way. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your question. I think maybe Paul, you can provide some perspective to start.
Yes, thank you, David. And apart from being part of the EWP Plus consortium, I'm also working on a daily basis in the IRO and trying to navigate our agreements throughout the EWP renewing phase. So I also have that perspective, I would say. And what you're describing, Valerio, I think that many colleagues who are present in this call will recognize the level of stress when it comes to, from the one hand, we want to conclude the agreements in a digital manner. From the other hand, we face institutions that are not ready yet, and we still not want to compromise the possible destinations for our students. And I think this is already the second or the third year that we're in this situation. From my perspective, at least in prior rounds of trying to renew the agreements and relying on email renewals, sometimes even paper agreements as well, this led to, I would say, not too much problems, because when we started nominating students, or partners did acknowledge the situation, and we're all in the same boat, I would say. So I hope this can reduce a little bit of the pressure. But then again, we are still indeed in this situation where some partners are not ready, or there's some technical difficulties. So the approach we take at Ghent University is we try our utmost best to have a digital interinstitutional agreement in place. When that doesn't work out, we rely on email renewals. And hopefully our partner can also accept that in order to, once they are able to connect to the EWP network, we can transform this into the digital interinstitutional agreements. And of course, this is somewhat maybe not completely in line with the latest instructions from the European Commission in terms of deadlines. From the other hand, I think also in previous webinars and in previous occasions, the colleagues from the team at EAC made clear that they also acknowledge that not everybody is ready at the same time, and that there will be monitoring, but there's still also about the efforts you take in order to go digital and try to establish the agreement. But at some point, it's out of your own hands. And I think it's also important to discuss it openly with your partner. And like I said, I think the experience we have from the previous round also should lead to a little bit more comfortable situation, because email renewals are kind of validated also by the partner, not only by the national agency or the European Commission. That's of course very important. But the main level of stress, as far as I am concerned and the faculties are concerned, is, will my partner accept when I nominate a student when we only have the email renewal in place? So that's a bit how we, from an IRO perspective at Ghent University, approach this issue of partners not being ready, or interoperability between our system and another system not working 100% at the moment.
Then maybe I can complement because I think this question is very much linked to this infamous deadline of the end of the year. So just to clarify the things, the goal is to have the EWP network and the dashboard functional well enough for you to be able to exchange interinstitutional agreements, learning agreements digitally by the end of the year. Obviously, there are some issues that are faced. That's why there is an interoperability action plan. That's why the team is working on all front to solve those issues. And we acknowledge the fact that there are issues. So we are not going to ask you to complete a task that is impossible, that you have to sign digitally by the end of the year, or otherwise it's not valid when it's not working for you. Nobody is forced to use the system if it doesn't work for them. Now, we strongly encourage all of you to use the EWP system to sign digitally the learning agreement, the interinstitutional agreements, when you can do it. Now, if you have a partner or if you are yourself experiencing technical issues, interoperability issues that prevent you from doing it at the moment and until the end of the year, until this interoperability action plan shows some results, then of course you can still exchange those documents by email or by paper, and they will remain valid after the end of the year. The point is not to force you to use a system that is not working for you, and nobody will be blamed or punished if you use an alternative way to sign your agreements because you want to pursue your good cooperation with your partners, of course. Then we hope that after, and that's the target, that after the end of the year, meaning as from January 2023, the system will be ready, working well, and you can exchange all the documents digitally, and that's the basis on which national agencies will monitor the exchange and signature of those agreements. Of course, we'll keep taking into consideration eventual technical interoperability issues that you may encounter in the future. So the goal is to encourage you to use EWP system as much as you can. And we know you're doing it. We know you're putting a lot of effort into it. And we are very grateful for you for doing so. But use it when you can. When you cannot, alternative ways remain possible.
Thank you so much. You have been very clear and really helpful with this. So while you were talking, I was really thinking about this kind of solution. So let's say that, for example, the partners who ask us to renew the agreement through email, maybe you can answer something like, yes, but please, if you can do it digitally before the end of December, could be better, let's say. But it's better than not replying in this way, no? So for now, we can just say could work, let's say. And then in January, we hope that all of them can join and use the platform as well. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Valeria. I think we all appreciate that the things are going so well at your university, and also your attitude. I think we appreciate it a lot from our side. I see we still have some more questions, but before we go to them, I would like to give the floor to Kostas for a while, because we are going to speak a little bit maybe from our side now, because there are a lot of questions in the Q&A regarding the EWP dashboard and the dashboard functionalities. And this is Kostas's bread and butter, for better or for worse, I think, at the moment. So Kostas, if you would like to say something about this topic, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. There are a lot of questions about the EWP dashboard's new UI and more functionalities in the chat coming up. I would basically like to reassure everyone that we are sticking to the time plan, and the dashboard users will have an improved UI with more functionalities at the end of the year, basically. So there aren't any delays. We are sticking to the plan. My answer is just for reassuring you that it's coming. According to your feedback, right? According to the users' feedback, that we've done a major UX research survey in the start of the year, if the dashboard users can remember this. And we've taken everything into account. Be a little bit more patient. It's coming according to the time plan.
All right, thank you, Costa. One thing that we do want to mention is that we got a lot of some questions about people asking to set up an IA or an LA, should we wait for the new UX and the new interface? That is not what we're saying, and also not what we are recommending, because there will be new functionalities, but if it should already work now. And it's also better for us if you start now. If there turn out to be specific, we have more time to solve them. So please do not wait until the end of the year for the new dashboard user interface to create your IAs and your LAs.
Correct. The improvements in the user experience should not be tangled with the fact that the EWP dashboard and its connection to the EWP network is fully functional for months now.
All right. Thank you, Costa.
Yeah, if I may add something.
Yes, go ahead, Janina.
There is something which is not so easily observed, but Costa's team spends a lot of time and puts a lot of effort in doing testing with the other providers, which really helps them to improve their software. And this is not just for the dashboard users, but also for the users of the systems of other providers. Especially after those two technical workshops in September we had, much more providers are now coming and asking for testing, and quite a lot of issues has already been resolved, and this is really, really very helpful for the network as a whole, not just the dashboard.
This is correct. Thank you, Janina, for bringing this up. Testing is an ongoing task on our agenda, and we're doing everything we can to guide everyone so that their implementation is okay and we can exchange IAs and learning agreements smoothly between us.
All right, thank you. And I think it's becoming some bit of a red herring or a thread throughout many of the question and discussions, is that the interoperability issues are our main priority at the moment. This town hall is part of the action plan to address these interoperability issues. The testing that Costa is referring to is something that is done continuously to make sure that the IDs that we have, the requirements that we have, and the things that we know that work are becoming part of the third-party provider system, so that many of the issues that you guys are experiencing now as end users will become fixed as soon as possible. But that's also why it's important that you raise these issues during the town hall, like we're doing now, or by submitting a ticket to the service desk, which is now, like I mentioned before, available for issues with third-party providers. So that these things HAFPA is also aware of these issues when she's going into meetings with the different third-party providers. So yeah, I think that is something that we will continuously keep to raise, and that will be also make clear in the Q&A document that we make available. But for now, we can go to some of the remaining questions that we have. After this, I see that it's Reinaldo Ojeda. That you still have a question. If you can hear me, I'm going to unmute you, and the floor is yours.
Hello.
Hi, hello, welcome. Yes, I hear you. Okay. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your pronunciation for my last name. It was perfect.
Thank you.
It's not a case usual here in France. So I have just a question. They have told me several times that we should not use dashboard because dashboard could give problems in the future. And I ask myself, well, what's gonna happen if I migrate to move or something else? What will happen with the agreements that I already have made, that my staff has already have made with dashboard? What do I have to do in that case? And why should dashboard stop working if it's a solution that you provide initially?
Right, I think there are two parts to your question that we think we can address. I think the first part is your concerns regarding the dashboard and the future existence of the dashboards. I think we can address that first. And the second part about being able to transport data from the dashboard to your provider if you're switching. I think that's something that maybe Kostas can address later because it's a question that we had a few times before. Maybe Joao, you want to say something about the dashboard and the future existence of the dashboard?
Hello, Reynaldo. It's an interesting remark. To be honest, I'm not sure I understand where that fear would come from regarding the continued availability of the tool. It's been with us for quite a few years. There's a lot of work going into it. So unless I'm missing something, I don't think that you or the colleagues should be concerned about not being able to use the dashboard in very simple terms. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you had in mind and where does that fear come from, or what is it based on? For the time being, I think I suppose my colleagues would agree with me that that's not something that is very much in our radar in terms of what we're working on in terms of concerns.
What our consailor has told us is that dashboard will not be able to handle a lot of requests, and that we have a lot of Erasmus requests, and the platform is not able to process it everything, and that sometimes it will break. That's clearly I haven't been able to receive this information right, because she has told us 3 times, but never is right. Nothing is in papers and we can't justify more than that. But she told us so, and she asked us to try to migrate, to move to another kind of application. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's really needed. It's a lot of things to do it. So.
Of course. No, I misunderstood your question, and I apologize for that. So it's not about availability, it's about fitness for purpose. And I think this might link with something that we've discussed as well in a few webinars and tunnels, which is the dashboard is not built to meet the requirements and the intensity of usage that a large university might. If you're going to put 1,000 or 2,000 mobile students through the dashboard, yes, you're operating a little bit beyond the comfort zone of the tool, because it was originally envisaged for institutions that wouldn't have an in-house system or the capability to go commercial. I also don't know exactly how big your mobile student population is. I suppose there is some connection between what your national agency told you and the fact of what is kind of the comfort zone for AGIs to use the dashboard. But business continuity, not an issue. You alluded to something else which is very important, which is data portability. You know, if you already started using, and actually this could be the dashboard, it could be any other tool. And if at some point you decide to migrate to a different system, excuse me, what happens to your data, and how can you take it with you? And we don't have the answer to this yet, but I'm really very happy that this issue is getting higher and higher up in the agenda. So maybe something that we can already share some solutions, probably in 2023, if not in 2022. It's not a firm promise. It's something that we just understand it's very important. Again, it should be a functionality across all of the systems that, you know, you are in charge of your data. You can take it as you see fit.
Yeah, exactly. If I may add to this, this was one of the issues raised during the technical meetings. Also in the context of statistics we gather in the network, because if you stop using one provider and switch to the other provider, but your data stays with the old provider, we cannot get access to those statistics. They are kind of lost in the network. So that's not good, because we really want to have the whole picture of what's going on in the network. So this issue is definitely one of those who will discuss in the near future among technically oriented people.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Ronaldo, I hope it kind of reassures you that the dashboard is not going to go away tomorrow or disappear into the far distance, and also about the fact that we are working on some of these portability issues. But thank you for your question, and I hope we were able to solve it or respond in an adequate way.
Yes, that's perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. And the next person that I would like to invite to unmute is Julia Marini. Julia, the floor is yours. Welcome. Oh, I think I did something wrong.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Sorry, I did something wrong.
Thank you very much. I am sorry because I also wrote in the Q&A, but I will explain my question now. I come from the University of Padova, and we are using Cineca to exchange our learning agreement. And I have a question, of course, about our learning agreement. The most relevant problem that we are facing now is related to the contact details that I would like to say many partner university to specify the contact of the person at the receiving institution that should approve the learning agreement of our outgoing students, and we should look for that information in the partner's fact sheet or in the website, and this requires a lot of time, and I believe this is not helping in streamlining the process. We have almost 2,000 outgoing students, so if we have to search that information student by student, it will take a lot of time, and of course the contact details might also change, so we also have to keep updated the information. I would like to ask for a suggestion, because I don't know if we are misunderstanding something. We believe, I'm not sure, this probably reflects the different organization of the universities, because we, for example, are managing all the EWP communications centrally, and this is why we have only one contact detail, and then it's up to us which is the person or the office in charge of signing the contract for the bilateral the learning agreement of our incoming students. So what we believe is this is not just a technical issue, this is something like an organizational issue, but this is really time consuming for us, and this is not helping in reduce the time we have to dedicate to each student and to each learning agreement. So I would like to have suggestions from your side. Maybe we are doing something wrong. We should do something differently. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia, for your question and for join us today to ask this question. I think, Joao, I'm sorry to put some more strain on your voice, but I think this is maybe something that you can answer.
Well, actually, a big thanks to Julia to have come forward with her question, because I actually tried to start answering the Q&A, but there's so much to say about this topic that I couldn't find a compact way enough. So, Julia, I think the problem that you're describing is well known to most colleagues, and it's direct legacy from the good old paper days of the learning agreement. I don't think you're doing anything wrong, but what I can tell you is that if I understand your message and your question correctly, you've sensed there is a better way to do learning agreement contact management. And if that's the case, we would agree with you, and this is something that we started discussing. Now, it's not a trivial problem because of the reason that you mentioned. So different universities, different organizational logics, sometimes not exactly straightforward to map. And I think we need to see kind of a broader adoption and also more consolidated adoption of the various EWP services so that we can start automatize or try to automatize the contact management. So it would be disingenuous of me to say, we'll have that fixed right away. But it is a very important question, because I think we are in agreement that a lot of time could be saved there. And it would also signal that we really went digital rather than just doing learning agreements digitally, but in the same manner that it was done before. So I don't know if my colleagues wanted to add more to this, but just to give you a primer that I think we're kind of in the same wavelength about how this would be something that would be really fantastic to optimize moving forward.
Thank you, Joao, for your response. I don't know if anybody else wants to answer or provide some information. If not, Hui, I ask you, I hope that this in a way helps you or answers your question, at least partly. But thank you again for asking it.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry. No, because from what we understood, actually the learning agreement reaches the partner, but they do not see it because they are not notified to the correct email address. So I don't know. It's quite hard to manage the contact on from the sending institution point of view. I think from my point of view, of course, it would be worth it to manage the contacts from the receiving institution point of view. In that case, I know exactly who is going to be the correct contact detail for that specific student. It's not possible for us to go in each fact sheet of the partner and see for the, I don't know, 20 fields of studies, who is the contact email address to add for the student of that area, department, or any other criteria that might occur. Okay, so I stop. Thank you very much anyway.
Maybe this is the topic for business process owner meetings, making people aware how important this information is for the whole process, because this is not technical one. This is the issue on the business level.
Yeah, I agree. That's why it's not a technical problem. It's an organizational issue. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we just have to make whatever we can to make people aware that the problem is that it really disturbs the process.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah, to clarify for everyone who doesn't know what the business process owners is, within our governance structure, we have different governance bodies. We already mentioned the infrastructure forum. That's where we meet with the providers and people with in-house systems. The business process owners is where we meet with representatives from the community, from you, from different higher education institutions to talk about these issues as well. So when we talk about those governance bodies, that is what we mean by the business process owners or by the infrastructure forum. So thank you, Julia, for your question. I think it's a fair point that you raised and something that we will definitely keep in mind and something that we can look further into. And thank you. I see one more hand, and that's Renata Ranchek. I hope I pronounced it acceptable. And I'm inviting you to unmute yourself, and the floor is yours, Renata. I cannot hear you because you're still muted, Renata. So if you have a question, please unmute yourself so that we can hear you. If not, if you don't have a question or if you have some problems, we can move on and then you can maybe ask it later. I think this meeting is around 90 minutes, so that means that we still have 10 minutes left. As you know, we mentioned before, the town halls is a new concept that was introduced as part of the action plan. This is the second town hall that we've hosted. And with your permission, well, I'm going to do it anyway, but I would like your participation. I'm going to start a poll with some questions regarding the town hall format. And more specifically, if you can provide some input, how you experience the town hall concept, and if it's something that you would join again in the future. So I'm going to look at the poll. I hope if I press launch, it will just start. So I don't know if you can see the poll now. I see some of my colleagues nodding, so I assume yes. So I will leave the poll up for some time, and then we can look at the different questions. The first question is if you were satisfied with the town hall meeting, so that was specifically about today. The second question is if the town hall meeting helped you learn some new knowledge or some new learning experiences, which is mainly if the information that we provided was feasible and to your liking. How do you consider the duration of the town hall? Now it's 90 minutes. If you feel it should be shorter or longer. And the last question is if you would consider participating in another town hall meeting in the future after today, if the experience was worth your time, or if you think that, well, if sadly it wasn't. For that, I would apologize in that case. So I'm just going to leave it here for a while. And then, given that we have a few more minutes, if anybody else has a specific question that he didn't see answered, he or she didn't see answered in the Q&A, please feel free to ask a final question. I will leave the poll up for a while, and I don't know if I can do the poll and meet people at the same time, but I see Evelyn Renders that you have a question. I will invite you to the floor. Hi, Evelyn.
Hi, David. Thank you. And thank you so much for organizing this again. I saw a question posted in the Q&A on which I thought I could follow up. There was a question about the business requirements for which the deadline in the reinforcement plan was August. And I think it was Joao who answered that it has been submitted to the European Commission. And then I thought, hey, the European Commission is here. So perhaps we can just ask the follow-up question that logically follows. So what is the status of the business requirements, and when and where will they be published?
Well, I can do my part to answer this question. The business requirements were indeed sent to us a few weeks ago by the team. We have reviewed them. We had some small comments, and we sent them to EUF team, who sent back to us some comments. I think that was Friday or yesterday, I don't remember. But we can expect to close this this week, and then our colleagues from EUF will publish them.
Perfect. Thanks for the update. And I think it's also nice to give a little bit of insight of how these processes work and why perhaps some of the deadlines that might seem as, publication deadlines in a reinforcement plan are actually not actually publication deadlines, but more like internal deadlines. So a distinction about those deadlines might be interesting to make for people reading these documents. Yeah,
then we have to admit ourselves that sometimes we get a bit delayed for different reasons on one side or the other, that some things were planned and take a bit more time for different reasons. But agreed, you can expect to see these business requirements pretty soon.
All right, thank you, Jan-Mal, and thank you, Evelyn, for the question. Given that I still have 5 minutes, I would like to announce an upcoming event. Well, event on the, I have to make sure that I'm right. On the 3rd of November, we will have the autumn EWP webinar series, another webinar, where in the morning we will have a webinar. I have to make sure that I have the hours right. It's 11 to 12:30. It's the morning webinar for dashboard session, and I think from 1:30 till 3 is the session for third-party provider users and in-house system users. It's part of the Erasmus Live series. We already did a spring version and a summer version, if you remember, if you were part of those. And we have 2 sessions separate for dashboard use and user of third-party provider systems, because we want to address other different topics, different issues. So there you will get one thing that Kostas mentioned in the dashboard. We will get another small update on the dashboard enhancements, and there are some other topics that we'll be talking about as well. I would like to invite you all to join the webinar, because I think there are many things, again, that we will be addressing that are on your mind or that you're contemplating about, and you will get some more clarity on some of the things that are happening or happened in the last few months. So thank you again all for being here today. As I mentioned, for the people, your colleagues or other people that weren't here today, the webinar was live streamed on YouTube and will be available on the European Student Card Initiative YouTube channel. We will also share the link to that recording in our follow-up document, where we will also be addressing or writing down some of the questions that were asked today. So thank you everyone for being here today, and for everyone that asked the question. And we will definitely also take into account the results from the poll and the things that you mentioned regarding the format and how it was in your experience. So thank you everyone. If there are no more specific questions, I think that we can conclude the meeting here. I want to thank all the panelists, all the task teams from the EWP consortium for being here today, and of course also our colleagues from EAC to join. And also Hapa to your first town hall meeting. So thank you everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.